Okay, so I'm back with Angus, and we had a couple more minutes, and I wanted to bring up this topic that has, kind of I've encountered many times over the past 5 years, and I just thought it was fascinating. I wanted to discuss it and also look at the German translation because
Mhm.
I realized this morning that the German translation, or that the translations are perhaps not super clear. So first, I'm going to read. This is the version that
Can
I
we
think.
know what you're reading from?
Yes, this is from my notebook, but it
Oh, okay.
this is the this is the version of the bar document, which is a letter from Steiner to Edward Shore in
Sure. Yeah.
1907.
Hmm.
And Steiner, and this translation, I believe I copied from the introduction to GA2
Right.
in and the printed version I don't have here, but it's a very lovely printed version that we have in English. It's got a lot of like color forms, like perhaps they're Goethe's drawings, color form drawings on the cover.
Okay.
So this is Steiner speaking in this letter to his friend. I gained complete understanding of the concept of time. I understood that there is a regressive evolution, the astral occult, which interferes with the progressive one. This knowledge is the precondition of spiritual clairvoyance. Have you ever heard this line, first of all?
No, I don't recognize the line directly.
Okay. So then this morning, because I wanted to discuss this with you and with Rhonda, I went to the archive to find it and looked at the English. And let's read the English. During this time, and this belongs already to the external occult influences, the conception of time became completely clear, meaning Steiner had this conception of time become clear to himself. This
Hmm.
realization had no connection with the studies and was directed entirely from occult life. That's a interjection that was removed. It was the realization that there is a backward going evolution interfering with the forward going evolution, the occult astral one. So now, suddenly, when it's put into this English, I wondered which is the forward going evolution? Is it the occult astral or is it the other one? I felt like it was unclear.
Es war die Erkenntnis, dass es eine Metapher ist. Yeah, he said they've just flipped it. Just obviously, said the German you got vorwärtsgehende, interferende. So in the English, if you're going to follow the German, the flow of the sentence, it was the realization that there that with the forward going, um, there is a backwards going evolution that interferes. That's like, but so the forwards happens before the backwards in the German, but
Yeah. And
there's both. Yeah.
so it's pretty clear in the German that the backwards going evolution is the occult astral, right?
Ah, okay. Um, yeah, it's the use of the hyphen, isn't it? Because you got three hyphens. Oh, no, they've got the same there. Um, I think what there's no question in our minds, like as modern thinkers, that there's a forward moving evolution.
Right.
And what he's pointing out is that it's like a cult from an astral point of view. There's also a backward going, but one of the things that I'm thinking about here, and if I stray too far from your question, then
Yeah.
like pull me up. Um, when we were talking about the philosophy of freedom earlier in chapter 9, we talked about motives versus the drives.
Yeah.
Motives are always forward looking. So they're but what happens? This might be. What happens is you realize that you bring something that has a forward aspect to you, to the concept, and it is working backwards in time. I don't know if you've ever practiced, the backward review.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you ever got to that stage where you sort of like you realize that, so like if I live really deeply into it, I've experienced time as reverse. So the cause, what was normally the cause, is actually
Yeah.
the effect of something else. When these astral effects, when these astral, the future is already.
It's a
How can we put this like clearly?
it's a
So,
question of
so
determinism too, because if the future is already there, where's the free will? So it can't be that simple.
exactly.
Yeah.
Mm, to the extent that if we are conscious of what these effects are, that this like free
Yeah.
will still, as I understand it, still becomes uh, possible. I remember when I worked through this brain tormentor before, I remember thinking in terms of perhaps if we think about uh, the idea of the perfect motor car.
Yeah.
It exists, but its first incarnation was a Ford Model T,
Right.
and then its next incarnation was as this and that, and then until we get up to, I don't know, the Lamborghinis and the Ferraris or whatever that we've got today. But that car, it wasn't realizable, but it was already there. The future was already
Right.
potentially there, but it has to work back through
Yeah,
time.
so it's like a multiverse kind of theory where there's all the potentialities.
Yep.
Yeah. And
Um,
so is the backwards going evolution the occult astral? Is that how we are to understand that? It has to be, because the forward going evolution can't be the occult astral. And the idea that Steiner gives in several books is when you enter the astral world, you are perceiving everything in reverse.
yeah. And so, yes, I think that the word, perhaps we want to unpack the word occult,
Yeah.
because occult tends to give things a negative slant,
Right.
but it could just mean hidden. And again, we can make reference to Philosophy of Freedom, Chapter 9 here. The motives, they are clear and present in my mind. The example we have was with going for a walk.
Yeah.
And that is clear to me. But so like these future impulses that are working back into me, they are completely unclear. What was driving Henry Ford to actually create that? Was he like completely aware of the full scope of what he was doing at every stage? I would guess not.
Right.
But there are hidden forces in there that are working. Um, yeah, so it's difficult. It would.
You want to see the picture again?
What I was thinking was it would be. Uh, there's a couple of questions. If we wanted to dig into this, and it would require a little bit of homework, is um, Steiner. He used to call occult science Geheimnis. Well, no, I've got the Swedish in my head. But it's not. What's the German? Geheimwissenschaft. It's secret.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, yeah. I'm pretty sure it is. And actually, now that I've got this GA up here, we can just. Do you remember the? Is it 10? No. Is it 12?
Mm,
Nope.
can't remember.
It's 11. No.
No. Keep going.
There.
There
There
we
it is.
go. So
Okay.
go to the German, or you might be able to scroll all
Yeah.
the way down. Geheimwissenschaft im Umriss. Yeah. So it would be interesting. One of the things that I have noticed is Steiner goes through periods of using certain words and avoiding other ones. Like just like
Uh-huh.
he has topics that are of interest for him for a year or two. It's like
Yeah.
particularly. So one way of tackling that is um, when he's using the word occult. Are we is it usually meant in the sense of spooky bad,
Right.
or it's like bad mysticism or something like that, or is it just simply hidden
And I
or
think it's always
unconscious?
I think it's hidden. I mean, I think the correct English translation today is
Mhm.
esoteric.
That's right. They
Yeah.
renamed occult
Yeah.
science to esoteric science. Yeah,
Right.
but that but so what becomes interesting if we wanted to dig deeper into this particular sentence that you're interested in, we need to know, does he mean just hidden as in
Right.
unconscious, unknown, or does he mean so like somehow dark?
Oh, and actually, so now with here, this is from the RS archive. The sentence in German
Yeah,
is with the word occult, not Geheimnis. It's right here. You see that?
yeah, yeah. um he was still in his theosophy days at this stage.
Yeah, 1907.
um and yeah, it's quite possible he is merely saying hidden and not dark necessarily.
Right.
Uh,
And of course in German the word is backwards going. And
yeah,
and
exactly.
and
Yeah,
so that's a pretty neutral line. But of course in some of these translations such as the one I just mentioned from this introduction to GA2, the the translation was a regressive evolution, which has quite a valence in
right.
English.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. So the thing that interests me about this
Yes.
so much is Steiner saying, yeah, through my studies, I came to a full clarity about the picture of time. The conception of time became completely clear to me. And this is a prerequisite for spiritual vision.
So let me read the whole
Yeah,
text.
please go ahead.
Oh, okay. So he's already talking about Kant. Okay, so he's not talking about this happened in 1907. He's talking about when he was reading Fichte and Schelling,
Yeah.
and so the importance of time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I do find that interesting because what's the name of the French philosopher who was actually really interesting on time, but Steiner was a bit dismissive of him.
I'm not.
Oh, he was a bit of a superstar in in the world of philosophy at the time, and the name completely escapes me. He was the one that um, had the famous debate with Einstein about whether time was real or just an abstraction, and Einstein sort of like claimed to have won, whereas
Wow. Hold on.
it's not Chouret. It
Let me
was
try to see this.
French philosopher. The name is it's not Merlot.
Henry Bergson.
Yeah, Bergson. Yeah,
Henri.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, so if you look at what he talks about at time, it's actually really interesting. And to my mind, it's pointing in the direction of the etheric.
Oh. Huh.
But Steiner is actually quite critical of him because he says it's fairly superficial. So
Huh.
this is interesting because I think we could have a very sympathetic reading of Bergson. You
Yeah.
know, like we were talking in the previous conversation about it's like little milestones along the way. Steiner could have said, "This is interesting. This is people waking up to so like
Yeah.
understanding that time isn't this abstraction that science has turned it into." And and today you'll see all of these YouTube videos saying time doesn't really exist. Oh my God. You have to be absolutely freaking brain dead. Time doesn't exist. Um, what does your whole experience tell you?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the people that say colors don't exist. They're
Right.
only
Right.
wavelengths. So Steiner I think he could have been sympathetic to Bergson and the project he was driving. But of course, if you're somebody that's gone way beyond Bergson and
Mm,
you see that's like he's at the beginning of the journey,
yeah.
then you might not have sort of like that fatherly, motherly approach and just sort of like say, yeah, don't waste your time too much with him. But I do think he's interesting to
Mm,
study because he really tries to bring back the experience of the quality of time as something real and essential to to the human experience.
mm.
Um, yeah, so Bexel is interesting.
So because I enjoy tying things back into essentially contemporary culture and contemporary modes of thinking, which I'm primarily encounter on YouTube, of course. Um, One of the ways I interpret this paragraph from the Bar document is there's a backwards going evolution that is occult astral. Um, when we as humans, creating our own reality, start to think into and picture into the future, that is somehow interfacing with the backwards going astral
Yeah,
evolution.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
We
perhaps
are
more.
the interface.
Yeah.
We are that
We are.
interface. So te- leaning more towards like the occult, what is it the angels are trying to do in our astral bodies at the moment? They are putting future impulses
Right.
in there. So they are reaching back. They're,
Mm.
put, they're putting back in time so that we
Yeah.
can move it forward. Um,
And it's
so,
funny to think of it in terms of backwards and forwards, because if the angels are putting future impulses into us, it's like they're reaching from the future back to us now. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And this is also interesting because if you look in science, when they look at, I need to be careful with the language I use here because I could just like use the wrong technical word.
Yeah.
But the laws of physics basically say that the universe is time neutral. Doesn't matter if time flows forward or backwards. It would
Huh.
work either way. You've got problems with causality going
Yeah.
on there, which is interesting because that's exactly you're bringing in these occult, hidden, dark question mark forces
Yeah.
that obviously our physics can't explain. But you find this same. It's like at the heart of physics itself there is this recognition that theoretically time can flow in both
Yeah.
directions. And so I find it interesting when you sort of listen to these people as like talking like in their deepest abstractions, but then you find them saying something that's conceptually identical to
Right.
Steiner. So
Right.
we've got forward and backward, and we're
Yeah.
there in the middle.
Yeah. Like a cross. But
Yeah.
so I'm thinking of, I want to mention for, listeners, perhaps all of the many exercises that Steiner describes as beneficial for us in developing our living thinking that have to do with thinking things in reverse. And so some of the
Mhm.
more difficult ones that I've heard or read are like, oh, listen to a piece of music and then play it back in your head in reverse, which is virtual, for almost everyone, that's impossible.
Yeah.
Or as he said, in some like description of his own life, he said, I used to, go to the most boring lecture possible and then go home and think through it in reverse. And that's also like extremely, extremely hard. Thinking through one's own day is much
Yeah.
easier um, because well, it's essentially much easier for me to think through the physical things, activities that I did in my day and picture them in reverse than to think through the abstract ideas presented by a lecturer in
Mm.
reverse. Would you find the same experience?
I do think it is one of those interesting games. Yeah, so this isn't an easy exercise. It's like it requires obviously like a great strengthening of the will, but it is actually particularly that doing it with abstract ones is is quite fun in the sense of so that you've got the answer, and so you know the final point that the lecturer made, but then
Yeah.
it's like you say, well, how did he get to that?
Yeah.
Or what was his cause to give the effect? It's
Yeah.
like this is reversed from you. You've got the effect and you're looking for the cause. And then
Right.
if you can live in that space long enough, sometimes you go, oh yeah, he said that.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can trace it back. And again, this is the beauty of YouTube. You could do, if you've listened to somebody that you found, I tend to do it with interesting people, not boring people, but if you've listened to something interesting, to like try to work back through how did that person get to that point,
Mm.
that can be an interesting journey to follow it back. But because you've got YouTube, you can also go back and say,
Yeah.
ah, I missed that, and ask yourself the question, well, why did I miss that? Why did I like
Yeah.
skip over that, as a means to trying to, yeah, improve the um, improve this moving, because when we wake up in the etheric, uh, time becomes space. So
Mm.
it's like we can move, it's like through time, and it's like we can scroll through it. So it becomes very easy from a reasoning point of view to understand why this exercise would be so valuable. You're forcing yourself into that type of memory space, but you're using your whole will
Right.
to counter the normal current of time that you experience.
Right.
Can I ask
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you two questions since we're having a
Sure.
little chat. Tell me about how this particular interest in bar and Chouret came about, because it's yeah,
Oh,
I've
so
never come
I
across it.
am not. It's not that I'm particularly interested in bar and Chouret. It's that that quote has been put into several books that I thought were important, like the books by Emberson.
Ah, good.
So it's this interest, this combined interest in like science and perception, and obviously, developing the new clairvoyance. All these things together seem to be encapsulated in that one paragraph.
I'm glad that you mentioned Emberson, because
Yeah.
that was the other question I was going to
Yeah.
have. So we're referring to a conversation where Angus, being provocative, he called Emberson a Luddite.
Yeah.
Um, and Angus has never read Emberson, but the reason he said that, the reason I said that, he said that,
Yeah.
was the I because he thought he could keep his books off the
Right.
internet, and we proved that
Yeah.
he, at least in the first edition, he didn't manage to do that. Um, but I'm interested in, because I've never read him. I'm aware of the conversation around him. Um, what you went ahead and so like you bought the books.
Yeah.
What was your experience of reading them? Uh, Um, it does seem to be a particular fascination of some people. It's something
Yeah.
that I haven't felt drawn to. It doesn't mean it's not interesting. It's
Right.
just that there's so many other interesting things. So what drew you into it? And then it's like combat me with that. No, he's not a luddite.
Well, okay, so I will tell you what drew me into it, but also let's define Luddite, because I understand Luddite as someone who both rejects technology and is also not familiar with technology.
Yeah, so it's yeah, absolutely, but
Yeah.
also so. because it's a movement that happened during the Industrial Revolution. There was a guy called Ludd, and he got his followers, and
Yeah.
they used to go around to like knocking down or
Right.
destroying the mills, or it's like the looms in the mills, because they thought that would solve their problem.
Right.
That they
Right.
thought that would, so that the Industrial Revolution wouldn't happen. We could go back to happy England again.
Yeah.
So all of that is also in the word Luddite for me.
Right. And I agree with that. That makes sense. And as we talked about in this offline conversation, in America we have this very tangible example of the Amish who mostly
Mm.
reject technology, but they also every community, which is essentially a religious community. I think there are thousands of discrete religious Amish communities in the country. They all develop their own rules. So some will use bicycles, some will use Zoom for business. Like I've
Mhm.
had a video call with an Amish man before. And it really depends on what the community has decided, but it comes down to a highly conscious decision about how to allow technology to modern technologies to interface with their life. So I have a lot of respect for that. Okay, but going on to my personal interest in Emerson, as I've said, I grew up around a family business that was a technology business, and it was pretty high tech for a family business, and that was an influence through my entire childhood, teenage, 20s, and part of my 30s. And so I was really exposed to technology in a positive way.
Yeah.
Uh, I was given a laptop when I was, 12, and a book on programming, and said, "Here, enjoy learning this." And that was in the early 90s. People didn't have laptops in general back then. So
Yeah.
I had every possible positive exposure to technology. And I actually I remember very clearly at that point in time, meaning my 12 or 13-year-old age, trying to learn this programming, and which was Visual Basic then, and being like, "Oh,
Mhm.
I really don't like this. I don't like it." And that was about the same time that three-dimensional video games became a thing on computer,
Yeah.
and I tried playing
Lemmings
those.
or something like that.
What?
Do you remember a game called Lemmings?
No, I don't know Lemmings, but
Okay.
the first one I ever saw, and this was like 1993, was Duke Nukem.
Oh
And
yeah. Mhm.
it
Yeah.
immediately made me nauseous, physically nauseous. It's an unusual situation to be like going like that, in a
Mhm.
computer screen. And so I never played them. I just never got into that kind of thing. Then early 20s, I was working in this family business, and I had the opportunity again to really try to learn more about programming. So, and I determined, I came to this conclusion. It was very easy for me to learn descriptive languages, which are like HTML and CSS. And again, this is the early 2000s
Mhm.
that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I could learn that, and that didn't cause me to feel like I was thinking like a machine. But then I tried learning PHP or more programming languages at that point in time. And I had this clear insight, oh, if I do this, it will change my thinking. And
Mhm.
I will have to think like the machine, and I don't want to do that. It's a rigidifying of the thinking. So I was easily able to learn HTML and CSS because they were about describing visual, essentially squares and colors and fonts on a square screen.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But to make my thinking match what the computer needed to do in order to think was a step that I didn't want to take, and I could feel what it was going to take. I could intuit what
Mhm.
it's going to take for me to do that. So I didn't do that. I'm like very comfortable with computers, but that was the step I didn't take. And around that same period of time, again, my early 20s, early 2000s, I really had this insight that somehow my personal karmic trajectory is tied into the interface of technology and creativity and art. And I don't know how that's played out in my life, but I write a lot about technology, and when I write fiction, technology is part of the story. So I encountered the books by Emerson um, at the very beginning of COVID, meaning like I got the first one, I think maybe the second week after things were shut down. So we had this huge, huge technological and social intervention in
Yeah.
culture. And at that same time, I was reading that first book by meaning From Silicon Valley to Gandhi Shapur, from Gandhi Shapur to Silicon Valley, number one.
Hmm.
And it was just like, wow, this is incredible. And then I read the second book in short sequence. And the way I got those books was by finding an address on the internet to the nonprofit that owned the materials and writing a letter on paper, which they responded to on paper. And obviously, because I was in the U.S., I had to send the letter to, I think it was Scotland, and received a response. And they told me how to buy the books, and it was to send a check. And so I did that. And but all these things are so it's just very unusual to even know how to send a check to Scotland, and how much, like, how does that work anymore? so so I was fascinated by those books, and also by the author's so the author's hypothesis is that, in a very simplistic form, this like wide open embrace of the internet is a demonic intervention in
Yeah.
our world.
Mhm.
And he references many things by Steiner, where Steiner, you know, is Steiner, of course, gave so many indications that it's very easy to find contradictory things as well. But his hypothesis is, if Steiner were here, he wouldn't have just wholeheartedly embraced the internet. That's it. And just like in the first Grotianum, Steiner requested that the electrical lines go underground because there was an influence to them being above ground. And for those of us who have, electrical sensitivity, and I'm not, any extreme on that level, but yeah, being in a uh, highly electromagnetic frequency environment is perceptible
Mhm.
compared to being out in the woods.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
Yes, and you've
Yeah.
opened up so many
Yeah.
lines of interesting uh, commonalities.
Mm.
So I also started programming when I was about 12, 13. I got a
Yeah.
VIC-20, like 10 years before you. And I
Wait, what's
learned
the VIC
just
20?
basic, yeah, a CBM, Commodore machine.
Oh, and I never had one. I don't even know it.
No,
So,
you're too young.
oh,
But anyway, so obviously I learned basic at the time,
yeah,
because that was the language that it came all beginner's all-purpose symbolic instruction code.
yeah.
And but I started hacking as well
My
back
gosh.
then. And I've got an interesting story I want to tell when we finish recording.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
something that's happened recently. Um, but I actually got drawn into, because I wanted to give myself infinite lives in the games that I bought. I wasn't happy with 3 lives. I had to learn machine code.
Yeah.
So basically this is just pure numbers.
Yeah.
It's not even a C language where at least you've got uh, a foothold in like terms. It's like LDA03, load accumulator with zero. Uh,
Right.
it's like hyper abstract, but I loved it
Huh.
because it gave me absolute power within that small sphere. You
Yeah.
know, once you found the key, and this will be a little bit of the story I'll tell once we
Yeah.
go offline. But there was something I was so strongly drawn to hacking, not nefarious. It was just
Yeah.
purely to, uh, when you set up these projects, whatever they happen to be, once you have something you really want to achieve in terms of programming, same with the rest of life really. Um, but then it's like all the setbacks that come, you don't mind that. It's like, no, but I want to have infinite lives. That didn't work. Never mind. Perhaps I'll try this one for
Right.
infinite lives,
Right.
and so on and so forth. So like yourself, my experiences with technology have been um, positive.
Mm,
Um, I've I've experienced the value of it, the liberating aspect of technology in a very strong way. I think if you love learning, you have to you have to love
yeah.
technology.
Right.
And that doesn't mean you can't learn without technology, but technology opens up avenues which were unthinkable just 20,
Mm,
30 years ago.
yeah.
It is breathtaking. And this thinking that you were talking about, not okay, I don't want to go into, I can't remember the name of the languages that you, PS,
It was
PH,
PHP at that point in
PHP,
time. Yeah.
PHP, yeah, yeah. Um, this is a conversation, this friend, this Italian friend that I'm reading the Bhagavad Gita with, we actually got talking about um, so these two aspects of language. So, like people, it's like autistic people
Yeah.
who only understand the content, so that the voice and anything like that, so everything is hyper literal. It's sort of like it's
Yeah.
ultra specific, and if you uh, if you say something with a smile or it's like with an ironic or it's like you drop the tone of the voice, that won't register. That just to the words.
Right.
It's like literalists,
Mm,
and this is learning a computer language is emotions aren't going to help me here.
right.
It's absolute pure thinking. That's the only way I'm going to solve it. If my emotions try to get involved, then I'm sunk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, but and when we were talking about this, I was also intrigued because like this is something you might also recognize. The more you engage with Stein, the more you're looking for. Okay, that's what I've described a phenomena, but there must be an opposite pole.
Yeah.
What is that opposite pole to autism? And really, it's people. Let's call them emotionalists. There might be a
Yeah.
better word for it, but what I mean by is somebody who is practically incapable
Yeah.
of listening to the words that you said and say they can
Yeah.
only hear the emotional tone in which you conveyed something. And this is interesting because what we're seeing within this spectrum of language is sort of like two aspects of our fundamental natures. We are feeling, willing human beings, and we
Right.
are it's like thinking human beings. And most people more or less can sort of like recognize that's like, yeah, it's not a too good idea being like autistic, and it's not too good idea being it's like an emotionalist. I've got to find some way of like living in between them. um yeah, so we move in that spectrum between autism and then
Right.
mm,
Yeah.
computers. I think what I'm trying to get at is I can understand your
Yeah.
so like I don't want to become autistic.
Right.
I don't want to learn PHP. I don't want to become autistic.
Right. And I I don't think it was that I was experiencing it in contrast to the emotionalism, but I was somehow experiencing, oh, there is this yeah, it was the this is how I always feel when using AI for an extended period of time or to accomplish a task or when using computers for too extended a time is the being cut up. I experience it as
Mhm.
being cut up. So it's like the hyper analytical would
Yes.
be one way to see it. And it felt like, oh, my thinking will have to be cut up into these discrete parts. That's how it that's how it is. Or that's how I
Mhm.
was experiencing the attempt to learn, an actual programming language. Or as I've more recently done, I realized about a year ago, I realized, oh, I can use it was Claude at that point in time. I can use Claude to write programming scripts to do this
Yes.
task I wanted to do. I wanted to have a time lapse photography of the sky and for a day, and then automatically compare all the airplane contrails slash chemtrails to flight radar, flight aware screen
Hmm.
recording, and put them at the same speed so that I could easily see which airplanes were generating which trails. And I wanted to do that all automatically, which is a
Hmm.
pretty sophisticated programming task.
Yeah.
Um, so I realized, oh, with Claude, I could, start to build a tool that would do this. And I started to do that. And I spent some days on it. And again, had this experience, even though I'm not actually like trying to do the programming now, I'm just having it write scripts. It's this same experience of feeling like cut up.
Hmm.
And so I don't feel like this is an emotional experience. It's just my perception of what it's like to deal with this technology. Have you tried using any of the AIs for, other than like a conversational task, but more like a procedural task for an extended
Yeah.
period of time? And how do you
Yeah.
feel?
Um, oh, we could start with Claude. Yeah, for an extended task. It was actually the one that I was going to talk
Yeah.
about um, afterwards. Uh, yes, but so that recognize that I got unusually hooked into this hacking project,
Yeah.
and it's the first time I've done it for a long, long time. And I was getting near the finishing line, and I could feel there's different words I could use. It's like my thinking became possessed. And I don't
Yeah.
mean that demonic. I just mean my thinking it's like started becoming automatic.
Hmm.
And it took greater will force for me to stop it. So let's say I'm not doing any programming hacking or whatever, and I go to meditate, and within 2 minutes, so
Yeah.
like I'm into that state.
Yeah.
Whereas one of the things that I noticed past week is because I've been so interactive that it's taken me longer to get into that state because thoughts that I don't want there want to be there. They
Yeah.
want to. Steiner talks about this automatic thinking. So like the thinking just goes on and on and on and on. That's one of my experience. So not cut up. It's interesting.
Yeah.
You described it as cut up, whereas I feel like it's tying me to a train.
Huh. Wow. Yeah. So we are having different perceptions of what it feels like. Yeah.
And let's just play with that idea. So, is it the nature of the task
Um,
that's so making me feel like it's a train, and you that it's cut up? Because I can, if I replay sort of like what's going on, it's sort of like I can try this next. I can try this next.
yeah.
That's the type of. I'm not sort of like thinking, oh, what can I try next? Those thoughts are happening in me, and I'm becoming aware of them. I don't want them there. So that's
Yeah.
why, but there's sort of like they're attached to my will to see the project realized. You know, the
Yeah.
final goal that I've got, it's like we've got this far and we're not all the way
Yeah.
yet. So what are the steps that we can do? So there's a natural train of thought that
I
carries on without me.
And I feel like I experience that too, because I frequently will have days where I need to complete a technical task, or weeks where I need to complete a technical task, which is, building a website or something like that,
Yeah.
or setting up some new technical system. And yeah, I feel that like, oh my God, I haven't moved from the computer for whatever, 8 hours, 12 hours. Like,
Yeah.
and that way it pulls you along because you're almost done, or the end is
Yeah.
near. So I recognize that. And I think what I'm talking about is something in addition to that, because that
Mhm.
for sure I experience too, and but that's a more like positive feeling.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, even if it's a little possessed, it's positive. Whereas what
Mhm.
I'm describing is it's more like, and it's akin to this. It's not exactly like this. It's like, oh, I've eaten junk food for 5 days. I feel gross.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And the reason I mentioned this, or It's in such a contrast to the rest of my life because while I use computers a lot for work and for stuff like this, we have a very, comprehensive life that involves a ton of in-person time. And like over the weekend, just I don't know, probably 20 hours spent hanging out with people in person. And it's such a different
Mhm.
after effect. So that's where like I reckon so Emerson, going back to was he a Luddite? I think he was not a Luddite per se because he was very informed. He had,
Mhm.
I think he died around the age of 68 or 70 when he was in 2017. But in the 70s and 80s, he had been working in technology. That's my understanding. So he was, it's not like someone who's rejecting it uninformed. It was
Mhm.
someone who was rejecting it informed. And yet I definitely see the reality of especially with the social interventions that have happened. Like it's so like we have to be able to use this stuff and without having it drain us completely. That's the other thing I remember about the beginning of COVID is when people who had regular jobs had to switch to doing everything, online in Zoom meetings. I remember this one girlfriend saying to me, "Yeah, I it's like I was so drained after every day." And then essentially people build up the capacity to deal with it. And one has to wonder, is this capacity really is it really a useful thing to be building up or would it be better to be building up other capacities?
I, um, Living deeper into one polarity gives you the strength to
Mm,
live deeper into the other side of the polarity.
yeah.
Could be one way of doing it. You've got obviously Nietzsche. What doesn't kill us makes us. What makes us stronger? And a lot of people probably don't like that sentiment, but so there's a kernel of wisdom there. It's like
Yeah.
when I meet resistance and then I overcome that resistance, I am a stronger being for having done that. So if I know working with computers makes me feel cut up,
Yeah.
but rather than giving up doing that, I find a way of managing it so that I don't get cut up. Then I'm not excluding myself from that technology.
Right.
But I've had to strengthen myself through doing it. And
Yeah.
this is more said in jest, but my tactic is being a cheapskate with Claude, because Claude only gives you a certain amount of prompts a day. So Claude makes sure I don't get addicted to him. I
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Okay, Angus, Claude, the others are not going to be able to help you here.
Yeah.
I mean, God, there's some horror stories with Gemini and projects. But so I've decided, okay, when something serious needs to be done,
Yeah.
I'll just use Claude. I've been very close to paying to get those extra credits. I said, no, Angus, don't pay. And so Claude is actually helping me
Yes.
not to
Built-in
not to become
moderation. Don't pay. I get that's good. I I should stop paying.
hooked. um, but you've also raised another really interesting thing with this whole Emberson question, because there's a quote from GA173 that I want to read you. This is
Yeah.
something that has lived intensively with me for about 10, 15 years. Um, and so let me read it and
Yeah.
then hear your first reactions and then see what I say. So this is from GA173, lecture 7. So mankind is now faced with having to solve. Should I put it on the screen so that
Yes.
you can read
Yes.
it?
Go
Let's
ahead.
share screen.
Yours. Okay.
Excellent. So,
Yeah.
uh, mankind is now faced with having to solve certain quite specific problems. This applies above all to something I have already spoken about, which is connected with today's much admired technology, a consequence of natural science, which is also much admired by spiritual science. In the comparatively near future, this much admired modern technology will reach a final stage where it will, in a certain way, cancel
Mm.
itself out. In contrast, something will come into being, I have mentioned it in passing here, which will enable people to make use of the delicate vibrations of their etheric bodies as a driving force with which to run machines.
Hmm. This is meant. I'm sure this quote is in these Emerson books, and so I've
Mhm.
definitely encountered this and wondered about it many times. And this is the question of moral technology. Uh,
It, sorry, come.
well, and I just wanted to know, what year was this from?
Let me have a look. December
19.
1916.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yes. So go on. What intrigues you about this?
It's this. It's cancelling itself out. So Steiner is crystal clear that our man is going to incarnate.
Yeah,
Anybody who thinks they can prevent it from happening clearly hasn't really. There's large chunks of their Steiner knowledge missing
yeah,
there. What we've got to do is we've got to manage, we've got to have a way of dealing with it. It will kill itself. I mean, I think it's really interesting how AI is sabotaging Microsoft, Amazon, and all of these companies at the moment.
yeah,
I mean, I can't help wondering if this is what Steiner's meant, but I don't try to read too much into it.
yeah.
But it is he's obviously getting at this. Technology will kill itself, so we don't have to worry about beating it. All we have to worry about is our, well, I'm simplistic, so here, our chief concern is our own relationship to it. Should we reject it? Well, that means a whole realm of experience and knowledge, etc., access becomes impossible to us. It's like
Right,
it cuts us out of many aspects of a modern society. Um, so we have to my interpretation, so we have to strengthen ourselves so we can live with its fruits, and not be pulled in by its bad fruits,
right.
by its evils. A recognition that technology will never be perfect, and all I've got to do is I've got to manage my relationship to it and be honest with myself about it.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, and so we do need to wrap up because now it's almost noon here, and I want to hear your other story. But I feel like I would like to in the future. Let's basically wrap up this and say, let's talk about that quote and the moral technology and the etheric vibrations again in the future. Okay, I'm gonna hit end recording.